Hi there, the name's Nico, and today I'll be going over my tier list for the best and worst characters in Solo's Eternal Return. Season 6 has been out for a few weeks now, and I felt it was time to go over the current meta, so let's get started. I will no longer be showing stats on the screen. It's taking me too much time for me to make the graphics for the stats. If you want to see the stats I used, I will link them in the description. Now let's get started. First character I'll be going over is Dagger Jackie. Now, Dagger Jackie actually became meta briefly, but then they nerfed her almost immediately. She is currently the most popular weapon type of Jackie, but it isn't doing that well other than having a high average rank, which is why she is going into B+ tier. Next weapon type for Jackie is Two-Handed Sword Jackie. This weapon isn't really picked, so it's hard for me to tell how she's doing, but I can say because of the addition of transfer consoles and credits, getting rare resources is quite easy, especially via Flood. Since Jackie has a good kit to get away from bad situations, it's easy for her to survive into the late game and have enough points to get Dainsley, which is the best weapon in the game in my opinion. But since it's Jackie and there are better two-handed sword users, she's going into B+ tier as well, but slightly worse than Dagger. Next weapon type is Dual Swords. Dual Swords got a rework since the last tier list and then proceeded to get nerf after nerf to a point where they are the least used weapon type, and with the removal of EBAD, Dual Swords have been hurting even more. But despite all this, she's not doing that bad, although extremely unpopular, which is why Dual Swords Jackie is also B+ tier, but the worst weapon type for Jackie. The last weapon type is Axe. Axe Jackie has been doing really well despite the nerfs it has received since the last tier list. Axe Jackie has high attack power and insane healing with the amount of lifesteal she runs, plus the healing in her kit and Axe keeps her alive. I have to say Axe Jackie is currently S tier. Next is Pistol Aya. Not too much to add about Pistol Aya from the last tier list, she's still doing the same thing on the same build. Great in the early game, and if she's able to secure some early game kills, she can just dominate a lobby. Otherwise, she falls off a bit, although not as hard as Sniper. Pistol Aya is still in A tier. AR Aya is next. People thought with the removal of EBAD that AR in general would struggle, but I did not think this would be the case, and I was right. With it being easier to get rare resources than ever before, getting Judgment is not that difficult. But AR received a pretty big nerf last patch, and this has toned them down quite a bit. I'm putting AR Aya in A tier. The last weapon type for Aya is Sniper. Sniper Aya is currently doing the same thing as last tier list. Red Sprite overall got a buff for Sniper Aya, since Sniper Aya didn't really stack extra skill damage, which is what made it so strong on some characters. But it's still the weakest version of Aya, so it's going into B+ tier. Next is Tonfa Hyunwoo. Tonfa Hyunwoo is a bit of an enigma to me, as so many people say he's super strong, but he isn't getting the results, even on one of the best players in NA, at least to warrant S tier. He has the same burst and can win the game for free if he's able to get the rare resources he needs, but this is conditional. I'm putting Tonfa Hyunwoo in high A+ tier. Tonfa Hyunwoo is next. Tonfa Hyunwoo is pretty similar as Glove, except he relies on getting wall stuns. He can also kill any squishy character without rare resources, and rare resources allowed him to kill almost anyone in the game. Tonfa Hyunwoo does struggle to win though. He is going A+ tier as well, but slightly weaker than Glove. Next character is Magnus. Magnus hasn't been doing that well in general as of lately. They did give him a rework, but he's still not good. Magnus is good at running away, and Bat can get some kills, which is why he's in B+ tier. The last weapon type for Magnus is Hammer. Hammer Magnus is even worse than Bat Magnus because Hammer struggles to get kills even more than Bat. Hammer plays Amp, and with the removal of extra skill damage, Amp Magnus has struggled to do damage like he used to. He is going into B tier. Now we have Rapier Fiora. Fiora in general has been really strong, and Rapier is no exception. With the rework of Fiora, she's been able to output insane damage. Rapier Fiora was playing Amp for the longest time, but with the changes to Missile Time needing Tree of Life now, she's pretty much gone full crit. But Rapier has been nerfed a few times, mainly due to Adela, and so it's not the best Fiora out there, but since it's still Fiora, Rapier is going into A+ tier. Spear Fiora is next. Spear Fiora is our first character going into SSS tier. She has been incredibly strong. Spears have high EP and don't need rare resources to do well, but with them, she's even more insane. Her best weapon is made from a meteorite and is incredibly easy to get, having a 42% pick rate currently, which for a rare resource weapon is insane. She also uses Diamond Shard, which is one of the strongest core augments in the game. It did get nerfed, but it's not enough. They did try to rework her last patch, but it didn't really change anything. The last weapon type for Fiora is Two-Handed Sword. Even though I mentioned with Jackie that with the addition of transfer consoles and credits, Dainsley has been really easy to come by, which you would think would make Two-Handed Sword Fiora insanely strong, but this is not the case. He does scale really well into the late game, but still struggles to kill people. This partly has to do with the changes made to Erendite, but it's possible that people are underestimating the strength of Two-Handed Sword Fiora. She is going into A tier. Next is Nadine. With the ability to get rare resources more reliably, Nadine has been able to get access to Archaeotoxins really easily. and this weapon is top 3 for most broken weapons in the game, and as long as she gets this, she can win the game easily. She is going into S tier. This is also despite most of her main build items being nerfed since the last tier list. The last weapon for Nadine is Crossbow. Crossbow Nadine did get a huge buff a couple of patches ago, and combined with the increased rare resources, she was doing insane. She ended up getting nerfed and then a rework, but she's still doing really well. She's going into S tier, but I do think she's weaker than Bow right now. Next is Zahir. Zahir has received many buffs back to back, but because of the removal of extra skill damage, Zahir has been struggling a bit. He has received a few buffs, but throw is still not the way to go. He also changed throw skill to be even worse for what Zahir wants, in my opinion. Throw Zahir is going into B tier. Shuriken Zahir is next. Shuriken Zahir was expected to not be that strong after the removal of extra skill damage, especially since the main strength of Caltrops was that it would do a lot of damage because of extra skill damage, but because of the buffs he has gotten back to back and the changes they made to Shuriken, he has been fine, and I'm worried he's going to be S tier if they buff him anymore. But for now, I'm going to put him in A+ tier, but you should definitely keep an eye on him. Now we have Hart. Hart was another character people expected to be really weak after the removal of Ebad, and once again, they were mistaken. She now stacks attack power and crit and nukes people's health bar. They nerfed her originally and then rebuffed her. Hart is going into S tier. Next is Isol. Isol was also expected to be weak after removal of Ebad, but I knew he wouldn't be, and I was right. As I mentioned of Aya, they nerfed Air by quite a bit this last patch, and the changes have been noticeable. Isol is going into A tier. I do think he's slightly weaker than Aya. Then we have Pistol Isol. They have tried to make Pistol Isol more viable by buffing his W with amp scaling, but with the removal of extra skill damage, Pistol Isol has not been doing well. He's going into B tier. Now we have Glove Li Dailin. Glove Li Dailin has fallen off a bit because of the removal of Eban, specifically related to her double strike mechanic, and Defiant Fist has been nerfed heavily as well. Li Dailin has been nerfed a bunch lately, specifically her ultimate because of Nunchuk, but I still think Glove Li Dailin is A tier even with these changes. Her kit is just too good. And the last one we type for Li Dailin is Nunchuk. Now I think Nunchuk Li Dailin is SSS tier. It's possible that the nerfs to her ultimate this patch have moved her down to S tier, but people have been doing really well with her still. Scaling on Nunchuk is really good and allows her ultimate to do a lot of damage even if you don't build into amp. Now we have Tuna Sword Yuki. Yuki actually has been doing really well. Again, this partly has to do with how easy it is to get VF blood, allowing Yuki to get Dane Sleep almost 20% of the time. But Yuki has received a few nerfs and his main augment, Diamond Shard, got nerfed. I still think Yuki is above average despite these changes, which is why he's going into A+ tier. For Dual Swords Yuki, he has been doing worse than the last tier list. This has to do with the changes to Dual Swords and the removal of Eban. The Dual Sword changes were originally really good and made him incredibly strong, but then they nerfed him patch after patch and then Ebad was removed. Now he's not really good. He can get some kills, but that's about it. He's going into B+ tier. Hyejin is next. She wasn't doing the best last season, but with a couple buffs, she has moved up the tier list quite a bit. Her best build is now crit. She's able to do a lot of damage just by autoing people. Once she gets Archaeotoxis online, she's pretty much unstoppable. Hyejin has a strong early game, and her kit allows her to get out of bad situations if need be. She's going into S tier. Then we have Shuriken Hyejin. Nimble Neuron has tried to buff Shuriken Hyejin, but since Hyejin is so strong and the extra skill damage has been removed, Shuriken Hyejin is still bad and not played at all. She's going into B tier. Now we have Spear Xiukai. Spear Xiukai and Xiukai in general has fallen off a bit because of the removal of extra skill damage. His ultimate doesn't do nearly as much damage, but he has received a couple buffs and he has slowly become viable. I have to place Spear Xiukai in A tier. Dagger Jackie is still not as good as Spear. For some reason, because of the removal of extra skill damage, people have been building crit on Dagger Jackie to try to make up for the damage loss like Hyejin, but it doesn't work at all. He is going into B tier. Next is Shuriken Sissela. Sissela during preseason was incredibly strong, although mainly in team modes. The changes they did to her because of the removal of extra skill damage made her too powerful, and she has been nerfed a bunch since this. Her biggest weakness has always been an extremely low health pool, and if anyone is able to get on top of her, she just melts. She's going into A tier. Then we have Throw Sissela. Throw has not been good on Sissela for a long time. Throw weapon options are just not as good as Shuriken. At least in KR, people are building crit on Throw Sissela, and it's not doing the best. Better than Dagger Xiukai though, but not good enough to get out of B tier. Now we have Chiara. Chiara was super strong all of last season, but she has finally received some nerfs, specifically to her shield. Missile Time was also changed to be a Tree of Life item, which has killed tank Chiara. I did think crit Chiara was always better, but I'm glad that toxic playstyle was removed. Healing Factor, her main augment, was also nerfed. So because of the nerf, she's moving down to A+ tier. Adriana is next. Adriana honestly got a rework during preseason. They removed extra skill damage, which has caused her passive to not be nearly as strong, but her main change was to her Q. Her Q is no longer true damage, but skill damage. By the middle to end of last season, she was getting pretty hard to deal with, but now she hasn't been doing nearly as much damage. People are starting to figure her out and getting her to be a kills character once again, but for now I'm putting her in B+ tier. Next is Shoichi. Shoichi is another character impacted quite heavily by the removal of extra skill damage, at least for his Ant playstyle. In terms of his crit playstyle, it was nerfed quite a bit. Maharaja was nerfed to the point where it's not played on Shoichi anymore. I think between these changes, Shoichi is going into B+ tier. Then we have Silvia. Silvia honestly received a buff during preseason and has been doing quite well because of it. She honestly has always been doing really well. At this point, instead of building Elegance, which received a nerf, she now builds Stampede. Stampede worked really well on Silvia due to her passive. Plus the change to White Crane Fan has worked in her favor. She is going into S tier. Now we have Emma. Emma is another character impacted by the removal of extra skill damage, but she hasn't really been compensated like Zahir was. She is quite a hard character to play, so Nomura tried to make it easier for new players, but as a result, it nerfed her for experienced players. She is going into B+ tier. Lenox is next. Cathode Lash got changed so that it's not really good anymore. Gleipnir got changed to be unviable as well, so now everyone is using Thunder Whip. White Crane Fan got changed for the better on Lenox, and since Lenox wants percentage champ anyways, this is overall kept her the same. The biggest change is that she's no longer as mobile due to her not using Gleipnir or Cathode Lash anymore, but her damage has increased. Lenox is still S tier. Next is Rozzi. Rozzi has been receiving nerf after nerf, although this is mainly because of how good she is at low ping. In NA, she's been okay. The removal of EBAT has hurt her quite a bit, so she now builds Magnum Bow instead of Electron Blaster. I still think Rozzi is an A tier despite this. Then we have Luke. Luke got some minor nerfs, but other than that, he hasn't changed that much. He is also remaining in A tier. Now we have Cathy. I've said this from tier list to tier list, Cathy is a character that will either suck or be broken, and she's back in broken tier. Last tier list I said she was in broken tier, then they ended up nerfing her into sucking, and then they rebuffed her back into broken tier. Cathy never really cared for extra skill damage, so the item changes have been a buff for her overall. Cathy got a slight nerf this patch, but I don't think it will be enough. She's going into S tier. Adela is next. I've been avoiding putting Adela in S tier for so long because she hasn't been getting the results to deserve this tier, but she finally has been, so she is going into S tier. She has been nerfed so many times, but she's still incredibly strong. You can build pretty much anything on her and she works. Then we have Bernice. Pretty much after I made the last tier list video, Bernice ended up being incredibly strong, so he got a bunch of nerfs, including a nerf to his rare resource weapon, Blackfire Cannon. Bernice is still in S tier. Next is Barbara. Barbara was another character that was impacted by the removal of extra skill damage, specifically related to her W, so now some people are playing her Vajra and building her somewhat tanky, using her E to do a ton of damage combined with healing factor. Aunt Barbara is still fine, but slightly toned down, so I'll have to say Barbara is still in A+ tier. Then we have Alex. I was gonna say Alex was S tier, but the nerfs they gave him a couple patches ago seem to have hurt him quite a bit. The biggest nerf was to his taunt duration. This makes his one-shot combo not nearly as good, but in expert hands he's still able to get results, which is why he's going into A+ tier. Now we have Sua. Sua just got a pretty decent buff last patch and is definitely noticeable. Her use rate has skyrocketed, although for a broken character, normally her other stats would increase as well, but they have not. Sua is someone to keep an eye on because she's been getting a lot of buffs as of lately, and I'm worried they might have overdone it. For now, I'm going to say she's in A+ tier, but she might be in S tier. It's just, even on good players, she's not getting the results that S tier characters are getting. Leon is next. Leon was a character I would say is S tier. He just got a hotfix to do less damage, but I still think he's quite strong. They ended up nerfing him a bunch since the last tier list, and then they have slowly rebuffed him to his former strong state. Leon just has huge burst and survivability with a shield combined with healing factor. He is near the bottom of S tier now, but still S tier. Next we have 11. 11 was an S tier character at the end of last season, but she has received a lot of nerfs, as well as the fact that EBAT is removed, nerfing the damage she does with her ultimate. The biggest nerf she received mostly was the nerf to her taunt duration. This has lowered her kill pressure by a bit. I'm gonna say that 11 is in high A tier. Then we have Rio. Rio was another character expected to be bad because of the removal of EBAT, but she's completely fine. Instead, people play her only in longbow form. Her damage is insane, and if you have no gap closer, it can be really hard to kill her. But because her main bow is longbow, she's a lot squishier and can die if anyone manages to get on top of her. I am putting Rio in high A+ tier. Now we have William. William is the character who's actually nerfed a lot by the removal of Ebad. Chiara was playing him with crit somewhat last season, but it was never as good as Ebad was. Grenade of Antioch is no longer viable because it doesn't have the damage to warrant using. The main issue with William right now is that they nerfed him a bunch when he was strong because of Ebad, and then when they removed Ebad, he barely got any changes. He doesn't have the damage to justify his lack of mobility, which is why he's going into B tier. Nicky is next. Nicky has been doing a lot better than I expected. I thought she would struggle a bit with the removal of extra skill damage, but she's been fine. People have also started to experiment with her more and use non-amp builds, and I've been having success with them, although it's still mainly amp. Nicky is going into A+ tier. Next we have Nathapon. Nathapon is a character impacted by the removal of extra skill damage by quite a bit. This is because of his auto passive. His main camera, VICG, still has Ebad on it and is the only item in the game with Ebad on it still. Nathapon is able to get high kills but lacks in mobility. In this game, a character without mobility will pretty much never be S tier unless their damage is through the roof. Nathapon is going into B+ tier. Then we have Johann. All Johann players went to Leon, but he's starting to see more play. Glove got nerfed a bit because of the removal of Ebad, but Johann has been running White Claw Punch as of lately. He has really good damage, and if he gets transition items, which is easier to do now, he's able to snowball and win. Johann is A+ tier in my books. Now we have Ava. Ava's art got changed from true damage to skill damage due to the removal of extra skill damage. I thought this would hurt her a bit, but she has gotten some buffs to it and it still does a ton of damage. If you have no way of getting on top of her, she is extremely difficult to deal with, but if you have a gap closer, she just melts. Ava is going into A+ tier. Daniel is next. Honestly, not much has changed since the last tier list. Daniel never built Ebad or extra skill damage, so none of those changes impacted him. It is easier to get rare resources now, but Daniel last season seemed to always find a way to get these rare resources. Honestly, think of Daniel as a vulture, picking up scraps and cleaning up after others. He's just good at surviving, being at the right place at the right time. He's going into A tier. Next we have Jenny. Now Jenny got hit with a huge nerf a couple months ago and she's slowly been getting to a better spot after a few buffs. On her amp build, she was S in the middle of last season, and that one nerf she received to her passive E moved her down to like B+ tier. They just fixed some bugs she had where if you built cooldown reduction and you used E, it reduced the cooldown of all her spells, and this change seems to have hurt her a bit. She is still pretty flexible with builds, being able to run crit or amp. I would say she's at the bottom of A tier right now. Next up is Camilo. Camilo was super strong near the middle to the end of last season, but when they changed how dual swords work, he ended up receiving a lot of nerfs. And then when they removed Ebad, he never got any compensation buffs, so he has been struggling quite a bit. He doesn't do nearly as much damage as he used to. He's going into B+ tier. Then we have Chloe. I have to say Chloe is S tier. They ended up nerfing Chloe a bit in the middle of last season, but she has gotten a bunch of buffs since then. Specifically, Nia got buffed a lot, making Chloe unkillable if she has her ultimate. Many characters don't have a way to deal with both Nina and Chloe, and she has really good damage with her autos. Now we have Johann. Nothing has changed about Johann. He's still a rat who makes smart bombs and solos and runs away. If you kill him, you get 15 smart bombs, making him a better trap pinata than Isol. He's still in C tier. Bianca is next. Bianca was quite strong in team modes in the middle of last season, so they nerfed her in all modes, but she's been getting some buffs over time, and I think she's in a solid spot right now. Items being changed from extra skill damage to percentage amp have helped her overall. Bianca is in A+ tier. Next up is Celine. Celine got some nerfs near the end of last season, but she got a huge buff during preseason, specifically to the scaling of her Q to be with attack power as well as amp, making her incredibly strong. She was quite good with percentage amp, and now that you can get more amp than ever before, she's doing quite well. She is going into S tier. Then we have Echion. Echion was struggling for the longest time, but Nimble Neuron kept buffing him and they fixed the bug where you couldn't input anything and would be stuck in one spot and instantly lose the game. Now I have to say that Echion is SSS tier. He is extremely tanky and does a lot of damage. Plus, with it being so easy to get rare resources, he's able to scale well into the late game. Fighting in late game Echion is literally impossible, even with Sanguine Gunbai, which has 60% heal cut on it for melees. He just heals for too much and does so much damage. Now we have Mai. Mai is going into S tier. She's another tanky character that does too much damage. Her kit has a way to fully counter auto attackers, and she has a taunt in her kit that counters spell amp characters. Her rare resource chest pieces are incredibly strong. If you somehow kill Mai and get her rare resource chest piece, it can make you win the game. They did just nerf Mythril Crop and Aranos, but it was just a slap in the wrist in my opinion. Aiden is next. Aiden is a character I don't fully know how to place. Noble Neuron thought he was broken considering the hotfix patch we got to specifically nerf Aiden, but everything I've seen about Aiden is just that he's strong if he gets rare resources and average otherwise. You can say that about most of the cast. His range farm is strong, but it's conditional. You have characters that do a lot of range damage without a condition in this game, like Chloe or Hart. Dainsleeve is a lot more accessible, but it definitely has helped Aiden do well, but I've seen people do well with Royal Longsword. Aiden is A tier in my opinion. Next up is Laura. Laura ended up being really strong after they gave her a bit of a rework after her launch, but the biggest nerf to her was removal of extra skill damage. She's also got a nerf to the duration of the knockup if she hits her ultimate, but the amount of buff she has gotten has compensated this loss. Laura is going into A tier. Then we have Tia. Tia is a character that is definitely the strongest in team modes, but she's not bad in solos. Tia is one of the only characters with true damage in her kit, but the devs have stated they are working on removing this. She has received some nerfs while they work on this, specifically to her W cooldown, which has nerfed her quite a bit in expert hands. Her fights generally last a long time and are susceptible to third parties as a result. I have to say that she's only A tier in solos. Now for the newest character since the last tier list. The first character is Felix. Felix was incredibly strong on his release and has received many nerfs since then, including many hotfixes. He was definitely on the weaker end after his 4th or 5th nerf, and then EBAD was removed. Felix is starting to pick up some steam, but he definitely is on the weaker end. He's going into B tier. Now we have Elena. Elena was not strong in her release, and I have to honestly say that she's never been that strong. They even nerfed her when there was no reason to give her a nerf, and then they re-added Smolder briefly, allowing Elena to do something, but Smolder was removed thankfully after community backlash, but this hurt Elena a lot. Her main issue is that she has a condition to freeze people, and this freezing mechanic is not reliable, so it's hard to kill people. Elena was also a character best with extra skill damage, and with that also being removed, she hasn't been able to do much. She is going into B tier. Priya is next. Priya was honestly the worst character on her release, and she's not that much better. This was the second support character they added, and if you watched my tier list video on team modes, you would know that she's not even a good support character. I have seen some people have success doing guitar weapon skill into her E, but other than that, she's an easy target. She is also going into B tier. Next up is Adina. She was again not that strong in her release. She ended up getting a bunch of buffs, making her viable, probably slightly above average, but the devs ended up nerfing her in the most recent patch, and she has not been doing good at all. Adina's main problem is that she's a worse version of Ava. She's a mage that has no way of keeping her distance from people, so as soon as someone gets on top of her, she's dead, and she doesn't have the damage to justify this lack of mobility. Adina is going into B tier. And the last character that has been added to the game is Marcus. Marcus is also not good. Marcus, like Elena, has a resource that he needs to manage, but the reward for using it properly is not good. His enhanced W is probably one of the worst spells in the game. His main issue is that he needs a lot of attack speed, and most late game items don't have attack speed. And he needs high attack power and lifesteal. And even with all of this, he loses to all of the high tiers. He is going into B tier. Okay, now I'm going to put the characters in order in their respective tiers, with the best of that tier being on the left and the worst of that tier being on the right. Please keep in mind though, if someone is on the right side of their tier, it does not mean that they are bad, unless you're talking about C tier characters of course. It just means that there are characters that are slightly better than them. They still all belong in the same tier. And yeah, this is my final tier list. I plan on doing this twice every season since these videos are taking me so long to do, since there are so many characters compared to when I started the series. So if you like these types of videos, please give this a like and subscribe for more Eternal Return content. I hope to see you at the next video.